Hey, what's up you guys? It's me, Lion, coming back at you with another commentary video. Or, I guess this is my first commentary video that's not a top 10, but, you know. Today I've actually found something pretty weird to talk about. So, Heathcliff and the Catillac cats. You've probably never heard of it, right? Well, yeah, probably not. In fact, that's exactly what I'd expect. I'd never heard of it either until one fateful Monday morning. I was browsing through my free public access satellite television one morning when I came across a cartoon that I'd never seen before. Now, let me set this picture for you. On my public access television, there are two cartoon channels and a few that air the same exact things as the other two main channels at the same time. They usually air PBS shows or little kid shows like Sesame Street or Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, but today there was a third channel in the mix airing a cartoon I'd never seen before. I could immediately tell it was an older cartoon, definitely from the 70s or 80s. It wasn't quite janky enough to be 60s animation, but it was obviously still pretty jumpy and traditionally animated. The episode in question, or the part that I caught, consisted of a brown dog character trying to prove to a group of cats that dogs were better than cats and could catch mice. As a fan of animation, this caught my interest and I sat down to watch what I caught on. While I could tell this wasn't the best produced cartoon in the world, I did enjoy myself while watching it. Particularly, I enjoyed the dog character, whose name is actually Leroy. Despite him actually being the show's antagonist, I was rooting for him to win and was actively excited when he did. But as the show ended, I couldn't help but be curious about what the show actually was. So I took the date from the credits, 1984, and looked it up. As it turns out, this show was actually known as Heathcliff and the Catillac Cats, this segment particularly being the Catillac Cats segment of the episode. Heathcliff and the Catillac Cats was generally split into two segments, the first being the Heathcliff segment, focusing on Heathcliff, his family, his girlfriend Sonja, and sometimes a few members of the Catillac Cats, namely Hector, Mungo, and Wordsworth. The second was the Catillac Cats segment of the episode, which focused on Riff Raff, the leader of the Catillac Cats, Cleo, who's basically walking furry bait before furry bait existed, and also happens to be in a relationship with Riff Raff, Hector, who wants to be the leader of the group, Mungo, the fat and dumb stereotype, who's actually less annoying than he sounds, and Wordsworth, who only speaks in rhyme. Heathcliff, who the first segment always focused on, is generally stingy, selfish, and self-absorbed. However, he'll fight for his friends and his girl. Even the first episode, titled The Great Puccini, showcases this, as Heathcliff goes on a quest to get his girlfriend Sonja back from the Great Puccini. He goes through many short, slapstick plans to get his girlfriend back, but all of them fail and fire back on him in comedic ways. The jokes are a little slow-paced for slapstick, so they don't always hit, but a few of them do hit, and they do show a real impact if a character gets hit or blown up with a stick of dynamite, for example. The show even has its fair share of darker jokes. The more absurd of a joke they try to pull off in this show, the funnier it is. At the end of the Great Puccini segment, Heathcliff crashes Puccini's show and discovers him for the fraud he is, then taking over the concert, and in true that happened fashion, everybody claps for him. However, his girl runs off with the true Great Puccini singer, who was covering for the fraud this entire time, and Heathcliff shrugs it off. The second segment of Heathcliff and the Catillac Cats is of course focused on the Catillac Cats. The leader of the group, Riff Raff, appears to be even more headstrong and rude than Heathcliff himself, so he essentially serves Heathcliff's role in these segments. Mungo is his fat and dumb lackey, Hector is an annoyed and bitter cat who doesn't want to follow orders, and Wordsworth exists. Then there's Cleo, Riff Raff's driving motivation for doing what he does. This is perfectly shown in the opening of the first episode, where Riff Raff is cleaning up the junkyard that the Catillac Cats live in, or rather, getting his lackeys to do it for him, because Cleo told him he needed to, despite the fact the others in the group had already told him this in the past. Riff Raff also makes promises he likely can't keep. When he promises to break Cleo out of the kennel that she's going to be boarded at, he also promises his friends will come along and help, despite not even asking them, for example. The second segment contains much more slapstick humor than the first, though it is the main form of comedy in both. The jokes happen much more quickly and are much more fast-paced, and thus land far more often. It seems that Hector is particularly prone to being the victim of slapstick, and Mungo is prone to being the cause of slapstick antics. This segment goes a little more graphic with his slapstick, really putting the time into over-animating the visual gags and allowing the rest of the animation to be a little more choppy by comparison, which I think was a good call for a slapstick kind of show in this era. Any wordplay jokes are typically left to Wordsworth in his rhymes, or are quippy run-liners given to one-time appearance characters or riffraff. During this segment, titled Kitty Cat Kennels, the group gets stuck in the kennel while trying to rescue Cleo due to Mungo's stupidity. It seems like this segment is going to go the route of the Heathcliff segment, having many failed plans to get out resulting in slapstick, and it does in a way. The difference is, after one quick joke, it has them break out through Riff Raff's initial plan, further showing off his crafty and intelligent nature. However, the group of dogs outside keeps him from escaping and thus results in the slapstick antics previously spoken about. They try multiple methods to beat the dogs, but as it turns out, Mungo's secret strength was truly the answer. He may not like to fight, but boy, does he have the power! They then break out of the kennel, and thus end the segment. However, this segment is distinctly lacking something. Distinctly lacking Leroy. So I'm going to be taking a look at the segment I mentioned catching on television earlier to get a look into this character who really caught my attention. The segment is actually called A Better Mousetrap and opens with the cats lounging around their junkyard home as Leroy, the junkyard guard dog, comes running in with blueprints. He seems almost psychotically excited, and the cats question what's going on. Leroy tells him that he's built his own mousetrap and it's his greatest invention yet. I find this interesting. A brutish guard dog character who's also an intelligent inventor? That's a strange mix of characters that I never thought I'd see in a cartoon, especially not one this old. This was before the time of lampooning stereotypes and subverting cliches, so it really is surprising. Anyway, Leroy tells the gang about his new mousetrap, and the desire to become famous for his incredible invention, but the cats kindly suggest that mousing is their department. Leroy demands to prove himself, though, and so they let him. The next part of this segment is a series of slapstick snapshots, as I'll call them, of Leroy setting up his mousetrap and failing to catch the mice, one of which has the most grating and unrealistic laughs I've heard since Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. However, at the end of his final failed attempt, the mice and him quietly mention that they need to work together. Leroy then gives up and decides to let the cats show him how it's done. However, when the mice don't show up, the cats put on disguises to try and lure out the mice. Once they've wandered into the trap, Leroy sets the mice on them and the trap is released, trapping in the Catillac cats and letting the episode end on a victorious note for Leroy. So, that's Heathcliff and the Catillac cats. Overall, I think this was a pretty good show. I don't follow and never did follow the Heathcliff comic series, so I'm not sure how it compares, but I imagine the Heathcliff comic has a lot more successful written humor than visual humor, but as animation is a visual medium, I can see why they made the switch. The animation is solid, especially for that era, and the slapstick humor in the Cadillac Cat segment is especially well done. If you're into animation, Heathcliff, or the 80s in general, I'd recommend checking at least a few episodes of the show out. It's not perfect by any means, and there are a few dated elements like the cassette player headpiece that Wordsworth wears at all times, but other than that, it's not really even a product of its time. The cartoony sound effects and animation quality give away what era it's from, but the content of the show, from what I can tell, is pretty timeless. So yeah, I'd say give it a watch. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you really enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, and if you really, really enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe as well. There's a link to my DeviantArt page in the description, and a link to my Ko-fi page if you're feeling extra generous. If you have any recommendations for other videos I should make, like animation memes, top 10s, or any more obscure cartoons you'd like me to cover, comment them down below. I'd like to thank you all again for watching until the end of the video, and I hope you all have an amazing morning, night, and afternoon. Lion Blaze, out!